There you go.
Here we go.
Yep.
Brilliant. We're rerunning this webinar because the recording didn't work last time. So it would
There
be
we
pretty disastrous if we're unable to share with you again for any reason. So very, very warm welcome to everyone who's joined us today. The recording will be available later via YouTube. So that's great. Hopefully another little resource for people. I am, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Ruth Taylor. I am the nutritionist with the Boots Online Doctor Service. I'm also a registered nurse and health and wellness coach, although I'm not sure I sound like those today. The healthcare
Oh,
baby. Anyway, and as we've already said, we are joined by the beautiful Rupa,
oh,
who's going to be saying hi in a second. And we also have Raman, who is here. Thank you so much, Raman, helping us with any IT problems that we hopefully don't run into. And also, just to let you know, we will be sharing a few polls with you. Really, it's for your interest, our interest, and just so that we know whether what we're advising or talking about is relevant to you and is something that you're interested in or you'd like to know more about. So very much this is your opportunity to bring along your questions. So we've got a few slides we're going to share with you all about perimenopause, menopause, and weight management, because we know this is such an important time for many, many women, and is something that many women struggle with in this midlife stage. So we think this is a really important subject. And we'd love to hear from you. Why is this? What's brought you along today? What would you like to hear from us? What would you like to know more about? We will very much try and orientate the webinar around what you need from us. So don't hesitate to let us know. And also just to let you know, we'll be running a few polls. They're completely anonymous. And if you did bring along any questions, please pop those into the Q&A box if at all possible. And it helps us to find them at the end of the slideshow. So Rupa, sorry about that, but welcome.
no, not at all.
Tell us
Thank
about
you.
you. Tell us all about you, Rupa.
Sorry, I think I've got my headphones on, but I think it's worsening my hearing. That's fine. Hi everyone. My name is Rupa Lyle, and I am a prescribing pharmacist for Boots Online Doctor. And I lead the menopause service on our online platform, which I love and have a great passion for. And I'm great to be here with Ruth and all of you today to talk a little bit and touch a little bit on the menopause and how it affects you and weight, obviously. Um, and yeah, let's hope that it's very interactive and do feel free to ask questions like Ruth has said.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rupa. That's great. We are really lucky, everyone, to have Rupa here. So let's pick your brains, Rupa, and let's make sure that we get everything we need from you today, because we
Go
know
ahead. Yeah, it's a good opportunity to. I'll try my best. I'll try my
Rupa
best.
doesn't know, then we'll be in trouble because she knows everything.
Just picking me up too much.
Right. So let's have a quick think about what is menopause, Rupa.
The menopause, Ruth and everyone else is a word that we're hearing a lot about now, and there's tons and tons of information out there that can actually be quite confusing as well. And it's important that you get the right information about menopause and symptoms in general. But generally speaking, the menopause is meno meaning month, your monthly cycle, and pause obviously means ceasing or stopping. And this happens, the average age in the UK is around 51, but it's not set in stone. It can be very much before that or after that, the age of 51. But it's defined as when your periods stop for 12 months or more and you reach postmenopausal. So literally, it's just menopause is that 12-month period. After that, it's postmenopause. And there's a whole host of symptoms that come. There's over 30 symptoms, very, very individual to every woman, but there's also classic symptoms such as hot flashes, night sweats, mood changes, skin changes, weight changes, vaginal dryness, urinary incontinence, all the different kinds of symptoms that can be quite confusing. Now, there's a stage before the menopause called perimenopause. And this is, as I call it, the puberty of the menopause, and it's transitioning into the menopause. So women who are perimenopausal are getting periods. So they can be having regular periods, irregular periods, sporadic periods, heavy periods, light, very changing periods. but they're also experiencing symptoms of the menopause, like I've described. And it can be a very confusing time because women think, well, I can't be going through the change because I'm still having my periods. That's not necessarily true. And you could be at that perimenopause stage. And this happens when you're in your 40s. It can happen before that as well. Now, a lot of women ask, is there blood tests that we can do to diagnose perimenopause or menopause? And there is, but it's normally done before the age of 45 if you're experiencing symptoms. And it's important to know that the menopause is a clinical diagnosis, not a biochemical one. So if you are getting blood tests done, if you're under the age of 45, you may get very normal results coming back, but you might be having symptoms. So they should be based on the symptoms you're getting rather than the actual blood result. And they're done separately. It's called an FSH, it's called follicular stimulating hormone, which is done around 4 to 6 weeks apart. And that you'll have to speak to your doctor for if you are needing one, but only if you're under the age of 45, like I said. Um, it's also important to know that there's other things that can prevent your ovaries from functioning properly. Some women go into a very early menopause. It's called premature ovarian insufficiency. That normally happens under the age of 40, where they just reach the menopause completely. And that needs to be further investigated. Also, genetics plays a part. So if you've got family history of early menopause or anything to do with menopausal changes, having surgery that induces menopause. So if you have a hysterectomy, your womb is taken out, that can cause a menopause in itself. Certain diseases can cause, or medical conditions can cause menopause, as well as having treatment such as chemotherapy. So it's really, really important to discuss this with your healthcare professional, and take it from there.
Thanks, Rupert. I think that's really interesting, really helpful to have that sort of like a broad view.
Mm.
You mentioned that blood test,
Hmm.
the FSH, the follicle stimulating hormone.
Yep.
How did you put a timescale into when people could be having that? Is there a sort of like, did you say 4 to 6 weeks or something? I wasn't.
Yes. So it's taken the first from the first actual uh blood test. You will then have to have another one about 4 to 6 weeks later. Like I said, if it's normal, if you get a normal result, but you're getting symptoms, that means that your diagnosis should be perimenopause or menopause.
Okay, that's really helpful. And really, what you're saying is, although there are blood tests, generally is more about your symptoms rather than
Absolutely. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
your hormones. That's really helpful to just clarify that, I think, for everyone here.
Yeah.
So one of the things we thought would be helpful to talk about a little bit today is this estrogen. Obviously, estrogen is one of our key female sex hormones and one that falls quite dramatically in perimenopause and menopause. And in fact, as you were saying, Rupert, it can be all over the place in that perimenopausal phase. So it
Mm.
could sometimes be even higher than when you start having your periods in the first place when you're a teenager. So you can feel very all over the place, very unbalanced. We know that if you have lower levels of estrogen, it can lead to a sort of loss of insulin sensitivity. And this is one of the reasons that people find that they put on weight around this time.
Mm.
We also know that that sort of loss of insulin sensitivity is something that we talk a lot about in this whole weight loss webinar series, anyway, because key to losing weight is having insulin sensitivity. So it sort of makes absolute sense, doesn't it? That if you're losing insulin sensitivity, that actually weight management can become a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
So, what you'll often find is that you'll have a greater predisposition to putting on weight and fat mass around your middles. And also, what we also know is as your estrogen levels decrease, your amount of visceral fat, that's the amount of fat that we carry around our organs, which is unhealthy fat, unfortunately, will increase. So we really need to be on the lookout. We need to be very alert to this phase. We
Hmm.
also know that that whole sort of story then leads to a loss of muscle mass. So this whole situation will mean that your sort of standard way of eating, your standard way of losing weight, and your standard way of just getting by in life needs to be really re-looked at because actually to be healthy, it needs a little bit more of a new view and a sort of looking through it all with a bit of a different lens, I would say. It's not it's not as overwhelming as it sounds. It can be incredibly simple, but I think we need to just take a step back and take a view on what we're doing and what we need to do differently, perhaps. And this whole sort of shift in that fat carrying capacity
Mm.
and that whole insulin sensitivity loss can lead to a real shift in our hunger as well. So we know that one of the hormones that's responsible for appetite, ghrelin, will be greater. So we're going to be feeling hungrier. So everything's sort of stacking up in a slightly more challenging way, I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Like you said, it's when we have that drop in estrogen, um, the way our fat is, it's unevenly distributed, unfortunately. And what happens is that women find that they're getting that stubborn middle, horrible visceral fat that you mentioned, and it doesn't shift. And it's horrible. Women just find that in itself causing low self-esteem. You know, a lot of women are doing their normal exercise regimes. They're eating healthy, living healthy, but it's just that stubborn fat that just doesn't go. And like you said, Ruth, it normally the visceral fat normally makes up 5 to 8% of our body fat, but in the during the menopause, that actually goes up to 15 to 20%, which is huge. Um, but good news is that there is things that you can do. Like you said, it's not all doom and gloom. And we're going to be talking about that today as well through lifestyle and diet. So we'll be able to provide some more information on that, which is good. Um, but what it also means is that visceral fat is increasing your chance of weight gain and changing your body composition, which means that there's something called the basal metabolic rate. So it's the rate at which we burn fat at rest, and that drops. So that causes loss of muscle mass and more fat. And as a guide, if you are more apple shaped than pear shaped, that means that you're likely to have more visceral fat. So you might look in the mirror and think, oh, what's going on here? Am I a bit more apple shaped? That means that you are likely to have more visceral fat. Um, and also, the other point to note is that genetics plays a role here as well. So if you've got parents or close relatives that are heavy around the abdomen area, you're more likely to get that as well, unfortunately. But we will be giving some guidance on what we can do to combat all of this going forward. Our metabolism is affected as well during the menopause. And like we mentioned already, we are losing muscle mass, which slows the rate at which we burn our calories. So we need to be having less calories every day to maintain that ideal body weight. Oh, you're up mute, Ruth.
Thanks, Rupert. So,
There.
it'd be great to share our first menopause poll, if that's okay with you, Raman. Don't know if you can dig that out and find it. Let me know if you have any troubles. And we just wanted to hear from you what's been going on for you, what your symptoms are of menopause, how you're feeling, how those symptoms are potentially affecting you. Lovely, thank you. And just to remind everyone, this is completely, no, we're not going to do this one. I think we'll skip this one, sorry. We'll go
It's
on
all
to
right.
the second webinar poll. So let's leave that one. Let's see if we can swap to a different poll. Okay, yeah. This one. There you go. Alrighty. There you go. Sorry about that, everyone. So we've got a couple of questions here. Want to know what's going on for you, what your challenges are, what you're experiencing, so we can pick up on what's going on for you as well, and hopefully pick up on anything we haven't thought of and talk about it. So just a couple of questions, they're completely anonymous. We will share the results with everyone in a minute, and we'll just give you a couple of minutes to have a look at this and see how we're doing, what's going on for everybody. So thank you so much. I can see there's quite a few trends here. About 50% of people here today are in the perimenopausal phase, and around 30% postmenopausal from what I can see so far. So thank you. And I can see that a lot of people are experiencing, as we would expect, hormonal imbalances. We'll have a look and share this. We'll just give it another minute. This is completely anonymous. Please take part if you're interested in knowing what's going on for everyone else. Don't feel obliged. It's really up to you. Okay, let's share the results. There you go.
All
Very
right.
quick. Okay, so Reaper, as you can
Mm.
sort of like, yeah, was this what we would expect? Lots of people are saying
Yeah,
no
yeah.
reason, feeling hungry, so that makes sense.
Hmm.
Maybe suffering a little bit with a lack of motivation to eat healthily or exercise. That's something we could pick up on
Yeah,
really, perhaps.
yeah.
And those cravings and emotional eating, that could be menopause. It could just be a learned behavior.
Yep,
Um, a lot of people, their priority, really interesting. 88% of you are wanting to prioritize your weight loss as your key thing to
yep.
focus on your health, but also fitness, energy, and just getting on top of those menopause symptoms. So thank you so much, everyone. It's really interesting to hear from you.
Hmm.
Really helps us hopefully to get something that's meaningful for you together.
It's also interesting that 7% are uncertain as well. So I wonder what the uncertainty there is, which is,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's the point. Maybe there's just a bit of an uncertain time as well, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
I think just want to point out that if you are uncertain about your symptoms, again, speak to your healthcare professional. There is, if you go to some really good evidence-based menopause website, you can get a questionnaire that describes all the different symptoms that you can get during the perimenopause and menopause. And it's a good tool to use to not only inform yourself or make yourself aware of if you are in that stage, but if you're going to go into your healthcare professional, take that questionnaire with you and discuss your symptoms in that way as well.
That's great to know, Rupert. Is there a particular site? Maybe we could find one by the end of the webinar and share it with
I'll
everyone.
put it on the chat box towards
Yeah,
the end. Yeah. Yeah.
thank you. So these are some of the other issues that perhaps can contribute to weight gain at this time. And it's really important for us to be thinking about what's going on from a sort of body balance perspective, because we know that menopause comes with a myriad of hormonal changes which can lead to weight management issues. But we also need to look at the wider context of this as well. It's very common for women who are going through the perimenopause and menopause to experience difficulties with sleep. And we know that night sweats and hot flushes are often something that people are experiencing quite commonly. And that poor sleep, we know we have a whole webinar all about sleep and the importance of sleep and how to sleep well, because we know that the research tells us that if we're getting regularly less than 5 hours of sleep at night, that alone can contribute to weight gain. So if something is disturbing your sleep very regularly, such as menopause, perimenopause, then that could be really having quite a big impact on your weight management. So we really need to be thinking about sleep. If that's relevant to you, it's really worth perhaps stepping back and actually looking at what you can do to manage your sleep. The other interesting area to talk about is also our stress management, because stress and menopause are really key to be thinking about collectively or together. We know that when we are in that perimenopausal phase and when our estrogen levels are beginning to reduce and our sex hormones are beginning to reduce, one of the areas that will produce a very small amount of sex hormone from is from having healthy adrenal glands. So if we're very stressed and we're using a lot of our stress effort in just balancing our stress hormones, then it could be that we're not getting the optimum level of adrenal support for our menopausal experience. So looking at stress, looking at our stress management is really important. So when we're stressed, we tend to produce a lot more cortisol, and that can lead to lower levels of progesterone and to something called estrogen dominance. Now, this is a weird one to be talking about in menopause, but it is an area that can happen. So even though your levels of estrogen are lower, perhaps, than they were before, if your progesterone is significantly lower because of your high cortisol, then you can end up with slightly higher estrogen than we would anticipate seeing. And again, that can lead to all sorts of issues around weight gain around the middle and really difficulty shifting that weight, especially around that middle area. And, fatigue and a loss of energy and all of the sort of symptoms that we associate with menopause can be because of that whole hormonal disruption that's going on as well. As estrogen levels drop, the body tends to become much less responsive to insulin. That was what I was saying just now, which normally has quite a protective effect. So that combined with an increase in visceral fat can really, really lead us into that whole world of being slightly more insulin resistant. Some of those signs of insulin resistance are things like fatigue, more hunger, having difficulty concentrating, difficulty losing weight. And you might find that you're urinating more frequently because of all of those things that are going on that level. So we really want to help with this because it's such a challenging pattern to get into and to get, but it is really possible to get yourself out of that. So let's move on and think about what else could be going on. So I think the other thing that I find really interesting is the sort of overlap between, and Rupa, I'm sure you know more about this than I do, but there's a huge overlap, isn't there, between your sort of sex hormones and how they affect you and how you feel, and also your thyroid function.
Mm.
So quite often it could be for some women, and I think the frequency in thyroid disease increases during this menopausal phase, interestingly enough. And that again is possibly because of the whole shift in hormones, and also we have a slightly greater predisposition at this phase of developing autoimmune conditions. So, one of the common thyroid problems that we can find diagnosed in the UK is something called Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which leads us to have a lower functioning thyroid. So, interestingly, signs of low thyroid function really overlap with just those sort of reduction in estrogen symptoms that we've already been talking about. So, things like fatigue, weight gain, mood swings, brain fog, they can be really key symptoms of low thyroid function. So, this again is something your GPs can very much screen and test for. And we know that for many women, unrecognized thyroid dysfunction is something that we perhaps miss because we're so confused as to what's going on in our own bodies,
Yeah.
and the symptoms overlap so much, don't they?
They do, and thyroid function can mimic, like you said, symptoms of the menopause and perimenopause. So it's really important to get that checked if you feel that there is a concern, or your health your healthcare professional can guide you there as well.
Yeah, and also it's again something that tends to be like there tends to be a family trend.
Yeah.
You can have sort of like a family history of aunts or mothers who've had thyroid problems or
Hmm.
been diagnosed with an underactive thyroid. And if you're in that ballpark, then it's really worth getting somebody to look at this for you.
Absolutely.
Oh, great. So, Rupa, anything else that would be really
I
helpful?
well, you've mentioned a really important a hormone called cortisol, which I think in this day and age we are always stressed. We need to get stress under control. I think we just in this generation of constant stress, there's no rest, there's no self-care, there's no time for it, I should say. But when we are stressed, when we're emotionally stressed, is probably the worst kind of stress actually, because everyday stress of going to work, working, that comes becomes quite robotic. Emotional stress is something that needs to be dealt with, and a nice guidelines who are our regulators now say for perimenopause and menopausal symptoms, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is very important that we pursue that as for our symptoms as well. It helps with stress. It helps with mood and anxiety. But cortisol and adrenaline are two stress hormones that are released when we are very stressed, chronically stressed. And what that does is it causes a lot of the symptoms that women experience of low mood, brain fog. Brain fog is a huge symptom of the perimenopause and menopause. People at work struggle with this. When they perform very well, otherwise, some people can't remember their colleagues' names, and that itself is very scary. Forgetfulness. Poor health in general is caused by the release of cortisol and adrenaline, increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, and your sugar levels fluctuate as well. There's also another hormone called testosterone, which is known as the male hormone, but it plays an important part in females as well. And if we have less testosterone, that normally affects our muscle mass, so less muscle mass and high fat content.
Thanks.
So,
Yeah, that's really great.
yeah.
Sorry, I was just picking up a couple of messages that say that there is a problem with the screen.
Yeah, I don't think
I
the screen
share.
can be
So
seen.
I am just going to try resharing and see if that helps. Sorry if that for any reason doesn't.
There we go. That's
Is
it.
that
I
better?
can see that. Yeah. Yeah.
How weird.
Yeah. There we go. I think we're getting a better
Alrighty,
res Yep.
that makes sense. Okay, thanks for the thumbs up.
Oh, good.
Good news. I can see there's a couple of really great
Oh,
questions as well, so we'll pick up on those.
yep.
We'll come
Yep.
to those shortly. So thanks, Rupert. Let's move on.
Mhm.
Really good. Oh, my favorite, one of my favorite
Oh,
subjects
yes.
is gut. Gut health. You know, this is a really, really important area for us to be thinking about.
It is.
So I think this is something, what we know, interestingly enough, is our gut microbiome shifts quite dramatically. The research is beginning to tell us that in menopause, perimenopause, our balance of beneficial and less beneficial bacteria changes. Interestingly, they now think that actually women have quite a different diversity of bacteria through their sort of earlier years to their male counterparts, for example. And perhaps what is happening is that we're getting more of a balancing, that we're sort of changing our balance during this menopause, perimenopausal phase. But interestingly, there's a lot of really interesting research that's emerging around the whole gut bacteria, the balance of your gut microbiome, and your ability to gain weight. So, some people, some bacteria will lead us to be slightly more finding that easier to gain weight. And equally, there are some bacteria, the Firmicutes, which are really thought to help with an increased risk of, or an increased ability to actually lose weight. So, actually, looking at the balance of gut bacteria is a really novel way in terms of managing our weight going forwards, but also we can really influence how our gut is, how our gut microbiome is by the foods that we eat. So, this is a really important area for us all to put a lot of attention into. We know that the gut microbiome is around 70% responsible for our immune health. So, actually, eating in a way that we're supporting a healthy microbiome is really important. So, we'll pick up on that in a minute, I think. But that could be a whole webinar all by itself, just because it's such an important area.
No, absolutely. It is. And I think that it's known, isn't it, that our gut is our second brain. So there's a lot that goes on there that affects us in lots of different ways in our health. And this nice jigsaw puzzle, I should say, is a nice reminder and a summary of what is important to maintain your weight and have that weight loss intact. And slow and steady wins the race is the key. And we know that as we get older, we're not going to be able to do what we did in our 20s and 30s to maintain that good weight. Things are changing. We have to make an effort now, even more so than we did when we were younger, and reminding ourselves, keep active, eat well, and consistently look at stress management, like we've mentioned, and really work on ourselves.
Very much so. And the sort of the reality of what that looks like is really important for us to really put some attention into.
Yep.
So let's have a look. What to eat. So why? The why is really important, I think. So what we know from everything we've talked about today is that there are some key areas that we need to be thinking about when we're choosing what we eat. And we need to become really mindful, I think, in our choices, in as much as we can eat in a way as to support our hormone balance. So these are the key things. Very similarly to what we talk about for weight management. So there's not a huge shift here in what we've been talking to you over the last few weeks, but actually just some nuances, I think, changed slightly. So protein is really continues to be incredibly important. But where we've talked about a minimum of zero point 0.8 of a gram per kilogram of body weight per day, there is some research that suggests that for many women, one study in particular was looking at actually consuming more than that and actually going up to 1.1 gram of kilogram of protein per body weight to improve our physical function and to really help in terms of our muscle mass and our fat distribution. So if you're somebody who is really getting that protein in. Well done. This could be an area to really think about. So what you want to do is take your body weight in kilograms, multiply it by 1.1, and make that your target protein intake. Now, what we know is that you can, wanting to be getting protein from a variety of sources, you want to make sure you're getting vegetarian protein as well as animal-based proteins. If you're a meat eater, you want to mix it up because that is what the research says can really make a difference. And you want to be making sure that you're getting protein with each of your 3 meals. And this is really important. I noticed somebody asked, what can I do? I'm starving hungry. This can really help with that being starving hungry. We know that protein is really good for satiety, really good for helping with hormone balance and repair. So this is why protein becomes really, really important. The other area to think about are your healthy fats. We need to make sure that we're really feeding our brains. Brains are made up of a huge amount of fat. So we need to be getting that fat from our diet. We have something called essential fats. We can't create those in our bodies unless we eat them. Our bodies don't get them. So we want those oily fish. The sort of darker skinned fish are the richer sources of omega-3 fat. So we really want those. We want some nuts and some chia seeds, the different types of seeds which bring healthy fats, and also things like avocado, olives, olive oil. The really anti-inflammatory fats, really helpful at this stage. Make sure you've got some in 2 or 3 meals a day. Doesn't have to be very much. A thumbful of olive oil is enough. It doesn't have to be huge amounts. It's very important. Carbohydrates are a really interesting story. So, if you're getting your carbs from those vegetables that are rich in colour, they're absolutely great. Carry on having those, load your plate up. They're rich in fibre. They really help with insulin sensitivity. You really want to max those up on your plate. Lots and lots of colour, please. If you're thinking about carbs that come from things like donuts and bagels and crisps, they're the ones we have to be really, really careful with because they are going to be sort of sitting on the scales, creating less insulin sensitivity. So we want less of those, as little of those as possible. Keep those as a sort of treat element of your meal. So if you're having rice or pasta, you want to really review how much of that you're having and have as little as possible. It's not awful, it is totally achievable. It just needs shifting your head around. And then we've talked about the healthy fats, so I'm not going to go back into these, but really, really helpful at reducing inflammation, really helpful with our joints, really important area right now in our sort of perimenopausal, menopausal bodies. We want to support our joint health as much as possible. Really good in terms of brain health, so memory, cognition, really important. I want to inspire you to get happy with fats because we've got a whole nation who just have avoided fats because they're a little bit nervous of them. So we need to bring those in. And then, Rupa, you're going to talk about phytoestrogens, a whole little story all of their own.
Yeah, phytoestrogens, they are chemicals that are found in certain plant foods. But what they do, they've got an advantage is because they've got a similar chemical structure to our natural estrogen in our body. So if we're adding this to our diet, it could help you with a lot of the symptoms of the perimenopause and menopause. And some of the examples of where you can find phytoestrogens are soy products like tofu. Tofu is very popular amongst our nation at the moment. Flax seeds is another one, sesame seeds and chickpeas. So maybe add those to your shopping list next time you go. Phytoestrogens can help with body fat distribution and metabolism, so they may help you with weight management going forward.
Very much so. And one of the things we're often asked about is soy because it's such an interesting story. So there's a lot of conflicting research around soy and whether it's good for us to eat or whether it's bad for us to eat. And that all spirals really round and back to what our gut microbiome is like for many of us. Many of us can break soy down and we can get the beneficial properties from soy. If we have this weird term, there's something called equal producers. If we're equal producers, then we can utilize soy. If we're not, then we're less likely to get those favorable beneficial effects. But for anyone and everyone eating soy, you want to be eating the soy that isn't that sort of man-made soy.
Mm,
You want to be eating the sort of more fermented, the older, the tofu, the tempeh, the products which have been really properly fermented, because then the absorbable elements of the soy that is going to be favorable and phytoestrogen rich will be beneficial in that situation. So it's not just eating it, it's making sure it's coming from the right source. And
that's
I'm
really
a fan of the
interesting.
edamame beans. They're really great as well.
Okay. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
How
Well,
interesting.
yeah, I find it fascinating.
Mm.
Mm, probably need to go back and research all over that again.
Yeah.
So there's some really interesting research about how we reduce our visceral fat. And so some of the research suggests that reducing that really can be helped by reducing those starchy carbohydrates in our diet. And that is thought to be a really key component of perhaps how to go forwards at this particular life phase. So we would say really bring those carbohydrates down. Now, we're not talking about following a ketogenic diet here. That is not really something we would recommend. And the reason we don't recommend that is ketogenic diets have been created for various specific health situations and actually need to be administered by a health professional. So we're not saying go keto, we're saying go low carb. It's very different. Low carb can mean that you eat up to 80 grams of carbon a day and still be in a lower carb bracket. So you can gradually bring those starchy carbohydrates down by bringing in more vegetables and then making sure you've got that protein and you're really feeling satisfied and full up and you're not hungry. We don't want you to be starving hungry. That's not what this is about. So, really interesting that that is a really key component for all of us to be thinking about is where are our carbs coming from? Are we getting some? Probably all need a few of those starchy carbs, but we're making sure we're not having too many. Yeah.
Physical activity, this is something that we've already touched on, and it's something that is non-negotiable now as we get older, and go through this phase of life. Now, physical activity, every woman is different, so it's really important that you find something that you enjoy, instead of feeling like you are forced to do it because you have to do it. And that's not the way to really go by this. You've got to be enjoying what you're doing. So I'll talk through some of the things that are important and to have, but there's different ways that you can look at it. So choose something that you enjoy. Maybe choose a partner or a buddy to exercise with as well. Make use of your time, whether you're at work, having a lunch break, going out for walks during that lunch break. Do not work in your lunch break because I know a lot of people actually spend that time to catch up on work. Please don't do that. I think it's time to really discipline ourselves, and that self-care comes into it as well. So if a lunch break at work is the only way that you're finding time to get some sort of physical activity, use that wisely. Um, and obviously, exercising has got its is it very well known advantages, as you know, to prevent weight gain and accumulation of that visceral fat. But it also helps with your heart health. It helps with your mood and anxiety if you suffer from that. It encourages better sleep as well at night. And it's also helping to improve your bone health, which is really important, and we want you to have as well. So there's things like strength training, which helps build new muscle and also increases your metabolic rate. So examples of strength training is things like squats, bicep curls, and ankle taps. And it's recommended that you do this at least 2 to 3 times a week. Then you've got things like cardio or aerobic health, so anything that gets your heart pumping, like cycling, walking, swimming, dancing. Dancing is something that you might find that you want to join a class in. There's lots of different types of dancing. Good way of meeting people, making new friends, increasing your social circle as well. So don't just look at it as the exercise part of it. Think of it how you're going to broaden your socializing and meet good new friends or people. Um, and then there's restorative exercise as well. So you're going to be nurturing those muscles that you're using because remember, we're losing muscle mass during this time. So things like yoga and Pilates, which is fantastic. It helps with your stress levels, um, and it just helps with toning your overall body as well. So I really recommend those. to be incorporated. And remember, it's non-negotiable at this stage of life. Start doing what you find that you enjoy.
I really like that. I like the non-negotiable. I think
Non-negotiable.
we literally have, yeah, the non-negotiable. I sometimes think we do just have to have a little rule book
We
to
do.
me,
Yeah.
and it just makes life simpler. So yeah, just time your food. So one study that I looked at suggested that if you did want some of these starchy carbs, having a small amount in the evening can be helpful in terms of supporting weight management. And one small study suggested it might help with increased weight loss. I feel a little bit conflicted by that, so I am looking for more studies to get my head more around that. But we want to be eating in a way that really aligns with our circadian rhythm. So we really want to be thinking about that. And one of the things that we know that can be helpful as well for supporting weight loss is also this sort of like lowering your calories down on alternate days, 2 or 3 days a week. So in that case, you would just work out what your standard basal metabolic rate is, what your calorie requirements are, and you would then reduce that down to around 25 to 50% of what that is on 2 or 3 days a week, and then go back up to the normal amount on the alternative days. And the other thing that some people find really works well for them, I used to be a fan of this, is intermittent fasting. I'm now more of a fan that people actually eat in a 12-hour window generally. So from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 at night, or 7 till 7. Generally having that sort of last meal, sort of 2 or 3 hours before you go to bed in the evening, can make a significant difference. So depending on your lifestyle, it's worth playing around with things. I think when you're going through perimenopause, menopause, and your hormones are all over the place, actually, although some people are saying fasting can be beneficial, my clinical experience has been that most people do better by having 3 meals with intervals between. Just it seems to bring that better balance. So that's just based on my clinical experience. So that I find really interesting. It's a whole big area for discussion. Just to let you know, we got our final poll, which we're going to share with you while we're just telling you what's coming up over the next couple of weeks. So that brings us to the end of the slides, and we're going to be coming to your questions now. Next week, we're going to be running the yo-yo dieting webinar that was scheduled for last week. That unfortunately, we had to postpone. A really important area for anyone who's lost weight and has regained weight and wants to make this their weight loss journey for good. Please do come along to that. And then we've created a new webinar all around thriving during the festive season. We want you to really feel like you can be in control. So we've just created a little webinar to talk through. We are planning on potentially running a webinar on the 23rd of December, just so that we continue that support as we hit that really challenging time of life and year. But we'll see what the sort of take up and the requirement, whether people actually would like to come along on the 23rd. So that will be it for this year. And then let you know what's happening. We'll be restarting at some point in January, probably around the 9th.
That's those are good webinars to go to before Christmas, for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
hopefully so. So let's, while you're just doing that, we are going to have a look at the questions. And while we're having a look at what your questions are, if you don't mind having a look at this final poll, it would be amazing. And we will see what is going on for you, what you're going to be doing differently as a result of what we've been talking about today.
Mhm. I
So
can
good
see
luck to protein.
protein. Yeah, I was going to say that's good. Phytoestrogens as well.
That's really good too. Definitely. Really good news. Like both of the key. So just going to end this poll now.
And it's good that the audience has realized that it's simple changes, simple insights that you can incorporate, which is so important. Doesn't
Yeah,
have to be drastic.
it's really, really important. Oh, we can put the webinars. I'll pop the webinars into the chat, but you can sign up. So I really love that comment from you. Thank you, Jay. I find the webinars more informative and
Uh,
helpful than anything else I've watched or read. Do you have a look at the podcasts? They're very light touch, but they are there to support
oh
you
yes.
now. Um, and just let us know. But thank you for that feedback. We love to hear that you are finding our support helpful. That is why we're here.
Yep.
Let's have a look at your questions. Right, I picked up a couple from the chat box as well. So,
There's one that I'm just going to quickly answer. It's about night sweats. Someone saying they're struggling with night sweats, and they are drenched. That's awful. And how can I overcome this? This is something you need to go and speak to your doctor about, and the possible treatment. As you know, there's hormone replacement treatment, but um, like I said, oh, I'll put that in the chat box actually in a second, is the website to go to with symptoms of the menopause. Take that with you, go and discuss the fact that you've got these severe night sweats and the treatment that you can have. And obviously every woman is different, so they're assessed differently anyway. But that should be something quite simple to talk to
that
your doctor
that's
about.
really helpful. And I think it's really nice to be told, actually, that's not okay.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
don't put
It
up with it,
isn't.
ladies. It's not fine. Go and get some help. It's really not okay. So,
No. Yep.
yeah. Okay, somebody's asking if fruit, completely different change of tone, but somebody's asking about fruit for breakfast. Okay, Raman, eyes down. Could we please share the core meal plan with everyone? Because that is the way we would recommend that you focus your attention on eating. And that's got a lot of, I think on the core meal plan, what we've done is we've created a little cheat sheet at the bottom and some swaps for you. So it should make it really easy. You want to be thinking about your plate as having, that portion of protein, working out what you need to eat in a day, getting the protein on there, half the plate of vegetables, the smallest amount of starchy carbs, if any, and making sure you've got those healthy fats on there too, and see how you get on with that. Fruit for breakfast is not my favorite. It's only going to work if you combine it with some protein. And the reason is if you have fruit on its own, it's going to perhaps be absorbed into your blood sugars quite quickly. You're going to have a little bit of a hike in your blood sugar. You'll feel initially quite good. Your energy will start to improve. But what we'll find is that isn't going to hold you very long. So, what you'll find is an hour or so later, you'll begin to feel that loss of energy, that loss of concentration, a bit of a slump, a bit of a craving perhaps for more sugar. So really help yourself there. Type, have some fruit by all means, but make sure you're having with some egg or some natural yogurt or some nuts or some nut butter, and really go for it that way. Because if you team it up with some protein or some healthy fats as well, you will get the satiety that you really need. What we want is we want you to balance yourself every time you eat a meal. If you get it balanced in a way that you feel that your energy is sustained for those 3 or 4 hours till your next meal, you're less likely to be reaching for snacks. And if you're not reaching for snacks, then your whole insulin sensitivity can really improve. As somebody mentioned that they're feeling hungry all of the time. That could be that you have a lot of insulin resistance going on. It could be that you have a bit of leptin resistance going on. Both of those situations are redeemable. You don't have to take a medication to improve, but you do need to eat in a way where you are supporting your body to become more sensitive to insulin.
Brilliant.
Does that make sense, do you think, Reba?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, good. So, absolutely, the starving all the time is a really horrible place to be. But you can overcome that. The other thing to say about that is water. Make sure
Mm.
you're properly hydrated. Something that we forget about all of the time is how important that hydration is. So you want to be having, a good couple of liters of water a day. And if that's something that you're not in the habit of having, make it a habit. But don't go from a zero to a hero overnight. Build it in slowly. So, if you're drinking 1 glass a day, take it up to 2 glasses a day. Once you've nailed that, that's become a habit, go up to 3 glasses a day. You can re-educate yourself for water to be something you actually enjoy. But it can really help also with weight loss and also with appetite management. There was a really interesting study which said that drinking 500 mils of water with each meal significantly improved people's ability to lose weight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I don't drink any water, so I
Rita,
I can't even get to hero stage. Oh, sorry, I didn't.
Didn't mean
I
to do.
know. Yeah, I do. It's a habit, and I think that's something that you've just made me realize I need to do.
Okay, I'm
Um,
going to hold you. We're going
oh,
to
you
hold you.
you will as well. I know.
Yeah,
I'll report back next year.
it's like a confessional.
Yeah.
Okay. We don't have a D's on don'ts, but follow that sort of like list. Follow the cool meal plan and see how you get on with that. Yeah, really good. Oh, here we go.
Okay.
More confessions coming in. So, Raman, you're also saying you're terrible at drinking water. You
Yeah. I'm
don't like
glad
food.
Raman and I can
Fine.
work on this together. Then perhaps
Yeah,
it
yeah,
is. It's something that it just doesn't. Oh, someone's written. I find boiled water, a slice of lemon and ginger helps with hunger
yeah.
and thirst. That's a good one. Yeah.
Also, somebody said to me the other day that this is a really interesting one. So, we've probably all heard of these things called Angostura bitters. So
Oh,
bitters are a really important element of our diet that we're losing because our taste buds are becoming much more orientated towards sweet foods as a society in general. So
okay.
actually, food manufacturers are producing food that tastes sweeter, and also we're stocking the fruit varieties that are naturally sweeter, less tart
Mm,
varieties of apple. So we need to really fight back because our bitter receptors are really important. So
it's really
really
interesting.
avoid
Yeah.
bitter foods. But there's also some bitters that you can add to water that can make it taste quite nice. So, you get these Angostura bitters, and you can just put a couple of drops in to water
Okay.
and just to give a different taste.
Try that one then for sure. Yeah.
Somebody is saying they're postmenopausal and the weights increased massively in the past 3 years. She's a very active person, was using a weight loss medication, but this hasn't worked. Any other ideas? I would say everything we've talked about today is in
Yeah.
the edited box, is really important. And I would just really almost like step back and take stock. Maybe work out. We don't talk about calories hugely because actually calories are a bit of a misnomer. But sometimes it's worth just working out what your basal metabolic rate is, what your sort of basic requirements are for calories based on how active you are. I sometimes find that people can be in two camps. Sometimes they can be eating a lot more than they think because
Yeah.
it's like sneaky snacks that they
Mm,
don't count in their calories. That happens. I can be guilty of that. So I know others can be too. The other side of that flip coin is we can sometimes inadvertently put ourselves in starvation mode
yeah.
because we just don't eat enough.
Hmm.
And then we get to that level of absolute frustration and burnout because we're doing everything we possibly can. We're
Yeah.
feeling hungry, we're feeling tired, we're feeling really cheesed off because the scales aren't moving. But it could be that you're not eating enough. And actually, if you're consistently not eating enough for your body to maintain its weight and to maintain your ability to, we're just a chemical network, really.
Yeah.
So our bodies are doing so much more than just maintaining our weight, either in a
Hmm.
healthy way or not. We need good energy in our cells to sleep, to have our energy, to think, to
Yeah.
function, to walk, to repair. All of those things are happening all of the time. And I think we forget how complex our bodies are. So sometimes we can be a little bit too circumspect and nervous of eating enough. So it's really worth looking at your calorie requirements. And if you're way off,
Yeah.
maybe track your calories for a few days. Don't do it long term. It's boring and
Mm,
you feel all cheat. That's what the research says. So track for a few days. Use something like a free, you know, calorie tracker. There are plenty around that you can Google and find or look
yeah.
on net provider and just see what you're doing. Because sometimes if you're consistently not eating enough, what's going to happen is your body will be in starvation mode,
Hmm.
which case it's going to hold on to all of the resources that you've got, even if they're not the ones you actually want. And it's going
Yeah.
to find it really difficult to lose weight. So have a look at that and see if that's relevant to you. It can
Brilliant.
make a huge
Good.
difference.
No, good advice there, Ruth. There's somebody who's also said that she's postmenopausal and she has a lot of physical activity. So dances twice a week, runs twice a week. Um, don't feel she can do any more, and she's on HRT. She's been on HRT for about 3 months, and weight seems to be going up. And can HRT cause that? There's no real evidence to say that HRT causes weight gain because what can happen with HRT is that you can start getting bloating, you can get water retention as well. But the key is to just give it some time and not, if HRT is helping you with a lot of the symptoms, that's great. But give it time, 3 months or longer. It does take time to work. Sometimes it needs changing of the product because it might be that certain the progesterone might not be working very well for you. But it is being patient and just monitoring how you're getting on. Um, and again, then just reviewing whether the if you're on the right one or if your dose needs tweaking. So persevere, patience. Unfortunately, HRT does take a while to work, and every woman responds differently to it. You could give the same product to 10 women, they'll all give you different stories. Um,
I think that's the thing, isn't it? We are so individual, and
we
yet
are, yeah,
medications are just medications, aren't they?
yeah,
Actually,
yeah,
how we individualize what happens in our body, we can do a lot through food and movement. So, there's a lot of personalization that can come from that.
yeah. And
So,
and this lady is doing a lot of movement, so keep at that, keep doing that. It's great.
it might be that you need to be thinking about, are you doing a lot of cardio, and would you be better off switching and doing
Mm,
some more weight management, sort of like some more squats and things like that to
yeah,
really build those big muscle groups that can make a huge difference in terms of insulin sensitivity and weight management, and is a really key part of the shift that we sometimes need to do at this stage.
yeah.
So that might be worth just looking at what those components of exercise are and whether there's room to maybe do less cardio, more
Hmm.
weight-based activity. Somebody's saying they've got 4 stone to lose. They've tried lots of different things, and your weight loss is staying the same. Your weight is staying the same. Really understand the frustration. Don't, just live where you are. At least it's staying the same. That's a really good stage. And I think we forget that sometimes actually just being in a holding position is good.
Yeah.
We think it's got to be going down all of the time. Obviously, it sounds like you're more stuck than an all the time situation, but things to consider is, are you always eating the same foods? If you are, can you change them? Really challenge yourself to bring different things in. Do a little food and symptom diary so we can share
Yeah.
a link to that and see what's going on. How is your food making you feel? Have you got energy? Are you feeling good? Are you feeling satisfied when you finish your meal that you're not still hungry, or are you starving hungry? All of those things are really important. The other thing that you could consider doing is thinking about what happens in your body in a wider sense. How is your energy? How are your joints? Have you got inflammation going on? Sometimes, when there are other things going on, a lot of people who have low mood or depression can really get stuck with weight management. And actually, food and mood has such a big role in how their mood is. So, you really need to be thinking about what else is going on for you. Are you sneakily snacking when no one is watching? Lots of people do. There's no criticism. Are there things that you can do that would change some of your behaviors? Are you eating really close to bedtime? Or, I just really need you to sort of take stock and think about everything. Are you sleeping well? Are you consistently not sleeping? Because all of those things, is your stress out of control? Are there is losing weight such a stressful element that it's actually tipping your stress? This is a very stressful time, and actually being focusing on our weight can be very stressful as well, especially when it's not doing what we want it to do and we feel like we're getting everything right. Really look at all of those different components and see which ones you perhaps think we do intuitively sometimes know when we stop and think what it is we need to do differently.
Yeah.
So really be kind to yourself. And then finally, just occasionally, you'll find there are some foods for each and every one of us. And again, it's very different, that just maybe create some inflammation in our bodies. And when we're eating those foods regularly, we'll find it very difficult to shift. And I guess back to what we were talking about earlier with the slides, is just having a look at what's going on with your thyroid health, whether that's working for you.
Really well said, and I'm glad you emphasized the stressed element of life.
Mm.
That's really important.
Okay, someone's asking, last question, overnight oats with berries for breakfast. That sounds okay, not too many oats, and maybe pop in, make sure you got that really good dollop of protein from some natural yogurt. That would have been a firm favourite of mine. I've sort of moved on to doing more nuts and sort of like vegetables, personally at the moment. I'm really enjoying that, but we're all different, aren't we? So
Yeah.
what types of foods cause inflammation in the body varies for everyone, but fried foods, sugar-rich foods, foods that are sort of like processed foods, they're all known to be relevant. For some people, wheat and gluten, for other people, dairy. So we're all very individual, but there are my starters for 10. Great, Ripper. It has been an absolute joy having you here. Thank you so
It's
much for
always
your time, your
no,
pride, and your amazingness. We really appreciate you coming, and hopefully you'll come back and spend another hour with us in the new year sometime.
of course, it's always a pleasure to be on your webinars, Ruth. Ruth is a fountain and of knowledge. She's an angel of everything. So please do check out her podcast. It's brilliant.
Oh, thank you for the big hug. Um,
Oh, that's so nice.
I'm sending you all a big hug. I think we all need lots of that. That's the other thing. Hugs.
Yeah.
Rated, but it's so important, isn't it? Take care, everyone. I really have a good week. Hopefully, see you before Christmas.
Yep.
Um, and Raman, thank you so much. And Raman and Reaper, you're in big trouble with your water with me. So watch that step.
Oh yeah. We've got a mission to accomplish for next year.
Yeah, definitely got a mission to accomplish.
Raman, I'll get in touch with you soon.
Take care, everyone. Have
Bye
a good
bye.
day. Bye.
Bye bye.